There is a country where bullet trains glide past thousand-year-old temples at speeds exceeding 300 kilometers per hour. Robots serve drinks in traditional bars that are older than most nations on Earth. Cherry blossoms fall on ancient graves and neon-lit streets with the same gentle grace. This is a place that exists in multiple centuries at the same time. It refuses to choose between honoring the past and building the future. This is Japan, an archipelago of contradictions, where every attempt at definition reveals another layer of complexity beneath the surface. Japan consists of 6,852 islands stretching across 3,000 kilometers from the subarctic reaches of Hokkaido to the subtropical beaches of Okinawa. At the four main islands of Honshu, Hokkaido, Kyushu, and Shikoku contain 97% of the total land area. Within these islands live 125 million people who are crowded onto just 30% of the available terrain. The rest are mountains that are too steep for any kind of permanent habitation. This geographical constraint created a vertical civilization of high-rise cities and terraced rice fields carved into mountainsides. The culture learned to find beauty in scarcity and to pursue perfection within severe limitations. The story of Japan is fundamentally one of isolation, followed by rapid adaptation. For over 200 years, the Tokugawa shogunate sealed the country from nearly all foreign contact with the outside world. This isolation created a cultural pressure cooker where Japanese traditions refined themselves to extraordinary levels without outside interference. When Commodore Perry's Black Ships forced Japan to open its ports in 1853, the nation faced an impossible choice. It could accept colonization, like most of Asia, or it could modernize faster than any nation in history. Japan chose modernization with a speed that shocked the Western powers. Within just 50 years, the country transformed from a feudal society into a recognized industrial and military power. This transformation required borrowing Western technology while somehow maintaining the essential Japanese soul that defined the culture. Tokyo is not a single, unified city, but rather a fusion of dozens of villages, towns, and cities that merged over centuries. The metropolitan area now contains 38 million people, living and working in close proximity. This makes it the largest urban area on the planet by both population and economic output. The city sprawls across the Kanto Plain in the place where the ancient Edo castle once stood as the shogun's seat of power. From that historical center, distinct neighborhoods radiate outward like spokes on a wheel. Each district has its own character and serves its own purpose in the urban ecosystem. Shibuya represents youth culture and the organized chaos of modern Japan. The famous crossing sees 3,000 people cross simultaneously during peak times without a single collision. Shinjuku pulses with business activity during the day and wild nightlife after dark. Government skyscrapers tower beside tiny bars that can hold only 5 customers at maximum capacity. Asakusa preserves the atmosphere of old Tokyo, where Sensoji Temple has drawn Buddhist pilgrims continuously since 645 AD. Kyoto served as Japan's imperial capital for over 1,000 consecutive years from 794 until 1868. The Meiji Restoration moved the emperor to Tokyo that year, ending centuries of tradition in favor of modernization. The city managed to preserve 17 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, despite the passage of time and the pressures of development. Kinkakuji, known as the Golden Pavilion, has its top 2 floors covered entirely in brilliant gold leaf. The pavilion reflects perfectly in the pond below, creating an image so iconic it appears on nearly every tourism poster for Japan. Fushimi Inari Shrine winds its way up the mountainside through an endless tunnel of 10,000 vermilion torii gates. These gates were donated by businesses seeking prosperity from the fox deity that is enshrined at the mountain's summit. The Philosopher's Path follows a peaceful canal that is lined with hundreds of cherry trees. These trees explode into bloom each spring, creating a tunnel of pink blossoms that draws photographers from around the world. Mount Fuji rises to 3,776 meters as Japan's highest peak and its most sacred mountain for over a millennium. The volcano presents a perfectly symmetrical cone that has inspired countless artists, poets, and pilgrims throughout Japanese history. This beauty comes with danger, as the volcano last erupted in 1707 and could erupt again at any time. Volcanologists warn that another eruption is statistically overdue based on the mountain's historical patterns of activity. Yet millions of people continue to live in the surrounding areas, accepting the risk in exchange for proximity to Japan's spiritual center. Hokusai's famous woodblock prints captured Fuji from 36 different angles and perspectives, showing how the mountain reveals itself differently depending on the season, weather, and viewing location. The official climbing season runs only from early July through early September, when the mountain huts are open and staffed. Outside this window, attempting the climb becomes extremely dangerous due to ice, snow, and sudden weather changes at altitude. Osaka stands as Japan's third largest city and proudly claims the title of the nation's kitchen, where food culture reaches extraordinary heights. The city's unofficial motto is "Kuidaur," which literally means to eat until you collapse from fullness. This philosophy manifests itself in countless street food stalls, serving takoyaki octopus balls and okonomiyaki savory pancakes to hungry crowds at all hours. Dotonbori is the neon-lit entertainment district where massive illuminated signs shaped like crabs, dragons, and running men tower over the canals below. Tourists crowd the bridges to pose for photos beneath the visual chaos that somehow feels quintessentially Japanese, despite the commercial nature. Osaka Castle dominates the city center with its reconstructed exterior that maintains the original 16th century appearance. The castle serves as a reminder that Osaka was once the nation's political center before power shifted permanently to Tokyo. Hiroshima exists in a permanent state divided by a single moment in history on August 6, 1945. At precisely 8:15 in the morning. An atomic bomb detonated 600 meters above the city center, releasing destructive energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT in an instant. The blast killed 70,000 people immediately and left the city in ruins that still smoldered days later. Another 70,000 died from radiation exposure and injuries before the year ended, making the total death toll nearly 140,000. The A-bomb dome stands exactly as it was left that terrible morning, a building whose metal structure somehow survived the blast. Everything around it burned to ash and rubble, but the dome remained standing. UNESCO designated it a World Heritage Site to serve as the permanent physical reminder of nuclear weapons' devastating power. The Peace Memorial Park now spreads across what was once the city's bustling commercial heart before the explosion. The cenotaph aligns perfectly with the dome and the peace flame, which has burned continuously since 1964 and will continue burning until all nuclear weapons are destroyed. Miyajima Island is officially called Itsukushima, but everyone uses the popular nickname that means Shrine Island in Japanese. The entire island has been considered sacred ground for over 1,000 years, with strict rules still enforced today. Births and deaths are forbidden on the island because they would pollute the sacred ground, according to Shinto beliefs. The floating torii gate of Itsukushima Shrine stands as Japan's most photographed structure after Mount Fuji itself. The gate stands in the tidal flats, where it appears to float magically during high tide when water surrounds its base. At low tide, it rests on the sand, and visitors can walk right up to touch the ancient wood. The current gate dates to 1875, making it relatively young, but it stands as the 8th iteration, replacing earlier versions destroyed by typhoons over the centuries. Shrine buildings extend over the water on hundreds of wooden stilts, painted in brilliant vermilion red, ensuring the island itself remains unpolluted. Nara served as Japan's first permanent capital city from 710 to 784 AD, during a period when emperors previously moved their palace with each reign. The city was meant to end the chaos of constant relocation, but political intrigue caused the capital to shift to Kyoto after just 74 years. This brief period as capital left Nara with extraordinary monuments that survived the centuries. Tadaiji Temple houses the Great Buddha, a bronze statue standing 15 meters tall and weighing over 500 tons of solid metal. The statue required all of Japan's available bronze reserves when it was cast in 749 AD as a demonstration of both imperial power and Buddhist devotion. A pillar in the hall's corner has a hole cut through it the size of the Buddha's nostril, and legend says crawling through brings good luck. But Nara's true residents are the 1,200 Sika deer that roam completely free throughout Nara Park. These deer are considered sacred messengers of the gods and have been legally protected for over 1,300 years. They bow politely to tourists who offer them senbei crackers sold by park vendors, though the deer quickly become aggressive if the crackers run out. Hakone sits nestled in the mountains about 100 kilometers southwest of Tokyo, where intense volcanic activity created natural hot springs throughout the region. Sulfur vents release steam and gases from beneath the Earth's surface, creating an otherworldly landscape of geothermal features. These conditions made Hakone Japan's premier onsen destination, where traditional bathhouses offer the authentic hot spring experience. Owakudani Valley constantly steams with sulfurous gases, venting directly from the active volcanic caldera of Mount Hakone below. Vendors sell black eggs that are boiled in the naturally scalding hot springs, and local legend promises that eating one adds 7 years to your life. Lake Ashi fills an ancient crater that was created by a massive volcanic eruption roughly 3,000 years ago. On perfectly clear days, in Mount Fuji's symmetrical peak reflects on the lake's mirror-still surface, creating the iconic view that graces thousands of photographs and paintings. Nikko sits 150 kilometers north of Tokyo, where steep mountains rise into persistent mist and primeval forests grow so dense they block out the sun. The approach to the temples feels like stepping backward through time into ancient Japan, despite the modern tour buses and souvenir shops lining the roads. Toshogu Shrine honors Tokugawa Ieyasu, the shogun who unified Japan and established the dynasty that ruled for 250 consecutive years. The shrine demonstrates Tokugawa wealth and power through extravagant use of gold leaf covering nearly every visible surface. Over 5,000 intricate carvings decorate the buildings, unifying Buddhist principles of simplicity in favor of overwhelming visual splendor. The famous 3 monkeys are carved above a sacred stable, representing the principle of see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. This teaching has become globally recognized, though most people don't know its origin lies in this specific shrine. Keegan Falls drops 97 meters into a narrow gorge with thundering force that can be heard from the observation platforms. Kanazawa miraculously avoided American bombing during World War II, preserving entire Edo period districts that most Japanese cities lost to fire and destruction. This makes Kanazawa one of the rare places where you can experience authentic architecture from Japan's pre-modern era. Kenrokuin Garden ranks among Japan's 3 most beautiful gardens. It created over 2 centuries by successive lords of the wealthy Maeda clan. The garden demonstrates the 6 essential attributes of perfect landscape design according to classical Chinese aesthetic theory. Spaciousness, seclusion, artifice, antiquity, water features, and panoramic views. The Higashi Chaya district preserves traditional wooden tea houses where geisha still entertain select clients behind closed doors and latticed windows. Shamisen music drifts into the streets from second-floor rooms where ancient arts are practiced exactly as they were centuries ago. Kanazawa produces 99% of Japan's gold leaf, and the precious material decorates temples, crafts, and even food throughout the city. Shirakawa-go sits deep in remote mountains where winter snow regularly accumulates to depths exceeding 3 meters, isolating the villagers for months at a time. These extreme conditions led to the development of Gassho-zukuri farmhouses with distinctive steep thatched roofs designed specifically to shed heavy snow. The name Gassho literally means praying hands because the roof's steep angle resembles hands pressed together in Buddhist prayer. These remarkable houses were constructed without using a single nail, relying instead on traditional joinery techniques where massive logs interlock precisely. Many of these structures have survived for over 250 years, despite being built entirely from wood and thatch that should have rotted long ago. UNESCO granted World Heritage status to the village in 1995, recognizing the architectural significance and traditional way of life. Tourism followed immediately, bringing daily buses filled with visitors who photograph the houses while residents continue living and farming inside them. Takayama sits beautifully isolated in the Japanese Alps, where surrounding mountains protected it from the wars and rapid modernization that transformed other cities. This geographical isolation created accidental preservation of Edo period merchant houses and traditional wooden architecture throughout the old town. Walking the narrow streets feels like genuine time travel, except for the crowds of tourists photographing every detail. The morning markets have operated continuously for over a century, opening before dawn, regardless of weather or season. Farmers' wives sell local produce, handmade crafts, and traditional snacks from small wooden stalls passed down through their families. In Takayama, Jinya stands as one of Japan's only surviving Edo period government buildings where officials once collected taxes and administered justice. The rooms are preserved exactly as they were, showing how regional governance functioned under the shogun's distant authority in Edo. Himeji Castle is Japan's most spectacular surviving castle and the ultimate standard against which all other castles are measured and judged. The White Fortress rises in elegant curves from its hilltop, earning the poetic nickname White Heron Castle for its graceful appearance. The castle appears ready to take flight like a bird about to launch itself into the sky. Remarkably, the castle never saw actual battle, never burned in fires, and never fell to enemy attacks throughout its entire history. And it survived everything that destroyed Japan's other great castles through a combination of luck and careful preservation. American bombers deliberately avoided targeting it during World War II, sparing Japan's finest feudal-era architectural achievement from certain destruction. The defensive design is brilliant, with multiple gates creating a confusing maze where invaders would become trapped in designated killing zones. Yet from the outside, the castle appears purely decorative rather than functional, hiding its deadly purpose beneath beautiful white plaster walls. Kobe is internationally famous for two things: the world's most expensive beef and a devastating earthquake that killed thousands of people in 1995. The earthquake struck at 5:46 a.m. on January 17, 1995. And lasting just 20 seconds, but killing 6,400 people and destroying over 100,000 buildings across the city. The disaster revealed the vulnerability of modern construction to powerful seismic forces and led to major changes in Japanese building codes. Kobe beef comes from specially raised Tajima cattle bred in Hyogo Prefecture, according to extremely strict standards and grading systems. The meat features marbling so extensive that it appears pink and white, rather than the typical red color of normal beef. Local teppanyaki restaurants grill the premium beef on hot iron plates directly in front of diners who pay extraordinary prices for the experience. Sapporo is Hokkaido's largest city and the northernmost major city in all of Japan, sitting well above the population centers of Honshu. The city was deliberately planned and laid out in a precise grid pattern, which is highly unusual in Japan, where most cities evolved organically. Medieval castle towns typically feature winding streets designed for defense rather than efficient navigation, but Sapporo has straight boulevards and numbered blocks. The famous Snow Festival transforms the city each February into an outdoor gallery of massive sculptures carved entirely from ice and packed snow. Artists from around the world compete to create buildings, characters, and monuments in frozen water that will inevitably melt when temperatures rise. Sapporo beer was founded here in 1876 by a German brewer who was specifically hired to teach Japanese beer-making techniques to local producers. The original factory still operates today as both a working brewery and a museum where guided tours end with generous all-you-can-drink sessions of fresh beer. Otaru sits on Hokkaido's western coast as a port city that grew extremely wealthy during the Meiji era from herring fishing. The merchants invested their considerable profits in constructing Western-style stone warehouses and impressive bank buildings that line the historic canal today. The architecture creates an atmosphere that feels more European than Japanese, though the ownership and function remained thoroughly Japanese throughout. The Canal District has been carefully preserved and transformed into a major tourist attraction where the old warehouses now house boutique shops, restaurants, and artisan studios. Otaru is particularly renowned for its glass-blowing tradition. and skilled artisans create delicate glass objects that rank among Japan's finest decorative crafts. Music boxes represent another Otaru specialty, and the city's Music Box Museum displays thousands of intricate mechanical music boxes in a building that resonates with competing melodies playing constantly. Okinawa was not always part of Japan, but existed for centuries as the independent Ryukyu Kingdom with its own distinct culture and language. The kingdom maintained careful tributary relations with China while simultaneously trading with Japan, Korea, and Southeast Asian nations as a prosperous merchant state. Japanese military forces forcibly annexed the kingdom in 1879, making it Japan's southernmost prefecture despite obvious cultural and linguistic differences. The Battle of Okinawa in 1945 became the Pacific War's bloodiest campaign, claiming 100,000 Japanese soldiers, 150,000 Okinawan civilians, and 12,000 American troops. The fighting destroyed most of the island's cultural heritage and traumatized survivors who witnessed atrocities committed by all sides. American military bases still occupy roughly 20% of Okinawa's total land area, creating ongoing tension between Tokyo's strategic interests and local residents who bear the burden of hosting foreign troops. Fukuoka sits strategically on Kyushu's northern coast, directly facing Korea across the relatively narrow Tsushima Strait that separates Japan from the Asian mainland. This location made it Japan's historical gateway to continental Asia, where Chinese and Korean cultural influences arrived first, before spreading gradually eastward. The city is famous throughout Japan for its distinctive tonkotsu ramen, featuring cloudy pork bone broth that simmers for many hours. The long cooking process creates the rich, creamy texture that characterizes Fukuoka's influential food culture, where street food reigns supreme. Yatai are small street food stalls that are set up each evening, serving everything from gyoza dumplings to yakitori chicken skewers to crowds of businessmen and university students. Fukuoka Castle ruins occupy Maizuru Park, where hundreds of cherry trees bloom spectacularly each spring, creating one of Kyushu's most popular hanami viewing spots. Nagasaki suffered the second atomic bombing just 3 days after Hiroshima on August 9, 1945, in a strike that killed an estimated 70,000 people instantly. The city was actually the secondary target that day, all as the bomber crew's primary objective was Kokuhara to the north. Cloud cover obscured Kokura completely, forcing the fateful decision to divert to Nagasaki, where the bomb found its target. Hills surrounding the city deflected much of the blast's force, reducing total casualties from what would have occurred over flatter terrain like Hiroshima's. Nagasaki's history extends far beyond those final days of World War II as Japan's only port that remained open during 220 years of self-imposed isolation. Dutch and Chinese traders operated from the artificial island of Dejima in the harbor when all other foreigners were completely banned. Hidden Christians practiced their faith secretly for over 250 years after the brutal persecution and crucifixion of 26 martyrs in 1597 made open worship punishable by death. And before we continue exploring Japan's incredible diversity, take a moment to subscribe to Infinite Travel. We document the world's most extraordinary destinations as they exist right now, before time and change transform them into something different. From ancient temples to modern megacities, from sacred mountains to tropical islands, we capture the beauty and complexity of our planet. Click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our journeys to places that are evolving, adapting, or vanishing in our rapidly changing world. Kamakura served as the seat of Japan's first shogunate from 1185 to 1333, when military rule effectively replaced imperial authority throughout the country. This established a precedent for samurai governance that would continue for the next 700 years until the Meiji Restoration finally ended feudalism. The great Buddha of Kamakura sits peacefully in the open air after 15th century tsunamis washed away the wooden temple hall that once protected it. The massive bronze statue has meditated in the elements for over 560 years, developing the green patina that now covers the ancient metal. For just 50 yen, visitors can actually climb inside the hollow statue and look upward at the interior metal framework supporting the structure. Hasadera Temple clings dramatically to a steep hillside overlooking the Pacific Ocean and contains a towering wooden cannon statue with 11 heads to observe all human suffering. Enoshima Island sits just offshore, connected by a causeway and famous for its sea caves and shrine dedicated to Benzaiten, the goddess of music and fortune. Kawaguchiko is one of the 5 scenic lakes sitting at Mount Fuji's northern base in a location famous for perfect reflections on calm mornings. The mountain's symmetrical cone mirrors itself on the lake's still surface, creating the quintessential image that appears on tourism posters worldwide. Achieving this perfect photograph requires arriving well before dawn, when winds are completely still, and other photographers haven't yet arrived to create ripples. The lake area developed as a popular resort destination during the Meiji era when new rail connections made it accessible from Tokyo for the first time. It remains extremely popular, with both Japanese tourists seeking escape from urban stress and foreign visitors wanting the iconic Fuji photograph. The Kyoto Pagoda stands on a hillside overlooking the lake and provides the most famous viewpoint, especially spectacular during cherry blossom season, when pink flowers frame the red pagoda and snow-capped Fuji in a single, composed shot. Koyasan sits atop Mount Koya at 800 meters elevation, where the Buddhist monk Kobo Daishi established a monastery in 816 AD, specifically seeking isolation for meditation. The sacred mountain now contains 117 temples, with 52 offering traditional Shukubo temple lodging to visitors seeking spiritual experiences. Guests sleep on futons in tatami rooms, eat Buddhist vegetarian cuisine prepared according to ancient recipes, and wake at 6 a.m. for morning prayers. And monks chant sutras in the main hall, while incense smoke rises toward the wooden ceiling and visitors sit quietly absorbing the atmosphere. Okinoin Cemetery spreads through ancient Cryptomeria forest with over 200,000 graves, including emperors, famous samurai, and ordinary people, all seeking proximity to Kobo Daishi's mausoleum. The founder is said to rest in eternal meditation inside, though no one has actually opened the structure to verify this in over 1,200 years. The cemetery transforms completely at night, when darkness settles between the stone lanterns and shadows seem to move in peripheral vision. Isa Grand Shrine stands as Shinto's most sacred site, dedicated to Amaterasu, the sun goddess from whom the imperial family claims direct divine descent. This connection makes Ise the spiritual heart of Japanese national identity, where religion and politics intertwine in ways that remain politically sensitive. The shrine follows an extraordinary tradition of being completely rebuilt every 20 years in a ritual that has continued for over 1,300 years without interruption. Traditional carpentry techniques are passed carefully from generation to generation, ensuring ancient building methods survive despite modern construction that would be faster. The main sanctuary buildings remain closed to the general public, with only Shinto priests and imperial family members allowed inside the sacred inner precincts. This restriction creates a powerful mystique around structures that most Japanese will never actually see, despite their cultural significance. The pilgrimage route to the shrine passes through traditional towns where shops sell local specialties and maintain traditions dating back centuries to when pilgrims walked here from across Japan. Matsumoto Castle is one of only 12 original Japanese castles that survived both the Meiji period's systematic dismantling and World War II's widespread destruction. The castle stands exactly as it was originally built in 1590, a remarkable testament to traditional construction techniques and fortunate historical preservation. Black walls earned it the nickname Crow Castle, in direct contrast to Himeji's brilliant white exterior and elegant appearance. The castle sits surrounded by a wide water moat, where colorful koi fish swim lazily and graceful swans build nests in the reeds. And the interior remains authentically preserved, with steep wooden stairs barely wide enough for a single person to pass through at a time. Defensive chambers for storing weapons and supplies line the walls, and narrow openings allow defenders to fire arrows or drop stones on attackers below. The moon viewing room on an upper floor reveals that this functional military fortress also served aesthetic purposes during peacetime when lords composed poetry while viewing the full moon. Naoshima Island sits in the Seto Inland Sea and transformed from a dying fishing village into an internationally recognized art destination through corporate vision and substantial investment. Benesse Corporation began building contemporary art museums on the island in the 1980s, creating installations that deliberately blur traditional boundaries between art and architecture and natural landscape. Benesse's House Museum, designed by renowned architect Tadao Ando, functions as both a luxury hotel and art gallery where guests sleep in rooms containing museum-quality artworks worth millions. Chichu Art Museum burrows into a hillside lit entirely by natural light filtering through geometric skylights rather than artificial illumination. The underground galleries contain 5 Monet water lily paintings, several James Turrell light installations, and 1 Walter de Maria sculpture in spaces specifically designed for those particular artworks. Yayoi Kusama's iconic yellow pumpkin, covered in black polka dots, sits photogenically on a pier extending into the sea, becoming the island's most photographed artwork and symbol recognized around the world. Yakushima Island sits off Kyushu's southern coast, where ancient cedar forests have survived for thousands of years, creating primordial landscapes that directly inspired the forest settings in Studio Ghibli's acclaimed film, Princess Mononoke. These forests demonstrate what Japan looked like before human civilization cleared most old-growth trees for agriculture and construction. The Jomen Sugi stands as the island's oldest and most revered tree, estimated between 2,000 and 7,200 years old, depending on which dating method scientists trust. Reaching this massive cedar requires a difficult 10-hour round-trip hike through challenging terrain. But the reward is seeing a living thing that was already ancient when samurai walked the earth. The island receives over 4,000 millimeters of rain annually, and creating the wet conditions that support the lush moss-covered forests and endemic species found nowhere else on Earth. Sea turtles nest on the island's beaches, and the forests shelter rare deer and monkeys in ecosystems protected by UNESCO World Heritage status. Aomori sits at the northern tip of Honshu, where the Tsugaru Strait separates the main island from Hokkaido across choppy, dangerous waters that isolated the region for centuries. The city remained relatively cut off until the Seikan Tunnel opened in 1988, connecting it to Hokkaido by undersea rail tunnel. The Nabuta Matsuri festival each August features enormous illuminated floats depicting fierce warriors and mythological creatures paraded through city streets at night. Thousands of dancers in traditional costumes perform choreographed movements to thunderous taiko drumming that fills the summer air with infectious energy. The Aomori Museum of Art, designed by Junaoki, features stark white galleries that deliberately complement rather than compete with the displayed artworks. A massive Marc Chagall ballet backdrop and contemporary Japanese pieces anchor the permanent collection in spaces designed specifically for viewing art without distraction. Japan also teaches profound lessons about impermanence through the concept of mono-not awareness and the bittersweet awareness of the transience of all things. Cherry blossoms are treasured precisely because they last only days before falling. Autumn leaves are celebrated because they will soon drop. Nothing permanent can be truly beautiful because permanence denies the natural flow of time. This acceptance of impermanence creates a culture that values the present moment with unusual intensity and finds beauty in decay as well as creation. Subscribe to Infinite Travel to continue exploring the world's most captivating destinations, where culture, nature, and human achievement combine in extraordinary ways. We document places as they exist right now, capturing the beauty and complexity before time transforms them into something different. From ancient civilizations to modern metropolises, from sacred mountains to tropical paradises. But we bring you the world in all its incredible diversity. Click subscribe and turn on notifications to join us on journeys to places that will inspire, challenge, and forever change how you see our remarkable planet. The world is vast and beautiful and constantly evolving. Let's explore it together before today becomes tomorrow's memory.